Trae Young finally has the perfect roster around him. Welcome in or welcome back. I know that it's hard to believe, but 8 seasons into his career, Trae Young finally has a roster that can maximize his talents. They made a ton of offseason moves this year, but that has me asking one question. Will this be the year that the Hawks finally make it back to the Eastern Conference Finals? Before we get too excited, we have to start foundationally in the draft, and they picked up Asa Newell out of Georgia at number 23. And I really like this move for them. If you listen to any of the reports, they were able to get their guy that they would have got with the number 13 pick, moved back in the draft, got another draft asset, and still got their guy. Now, I do think that he may have a little bit of an uphill battle as far as the depth chart goes with guys like Tingus Pingus, Aneka Kongwu, and Jalen Johnson. But I do think that when he does get PT, he's going to be Trae Young's favorite target. I think that his perfect role is going to be the same kind of role that we see Aaron Gordon play in Denver. Live in the dunker spot, be a connective passing piece, and play good defense. Now, I certainly don't think that he is as athletic as Aaron Gordon was or even still is, but I do know that when he does see the floor, he's going to be catching a ton of Trae Young lobs. This is the portion where I start talking about their re-signings, and the Hawks didn't exactly have any. And I'm not really concerned that they didn't re-sign any of their talent, because honestly, last year's team was very flawed. Arguably, the most flawed roster Trae Young has ever had. And I think that they were perfectly fine players. They just fit into one of two camps. They were either this mid to low tier impact player like a Karis LeVert, or they were much, much older and didn't match a timeline anymore like a Clint Capella. By my count, the Hawks moved on from 7 different players last year, and with all the additions that we're getting ready to talk about, I think that was the right move. Now let's talk about some of those additions. We have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard, and the aforementioned Tingus Pingus. Now I think if the Nuggets just didn't exist, the Hawks would very comfortably have the best offseason in the entire league. They didn't just make moves, they made winning moves. To be able to snag Nickeil Alexander-Walker away from the Timberwolves is an absolute heist. The box score for him will absolutely not do it any justice, but he is a winning player. He was in 6th Man of the Year conversations last year with averages of 9, 3, 3, and a stock a game. And if that doesn't tell you the kind of athlete, the kind of player that the Hawks now have on their roster, I don't know what will. He's one of the best wing defenders in the entire league. And when you have someone as defensively challenged as Trae Young is, you need those in bunches. I also think that Luke Kennard will go down as a very underrated pickup for this team. Last year, he only averaged 9 points a game, but he shot 43% from 3 in only like 4 attempts a game. And Memphis really didn't shoot a lot of threes last year, so I'd have to imagine that if you were putting him next to Trae Young in this Atlanta offense where they like to run up and down the floor and they like to run up the score, I'd have to imagine that those 4 attempts a game probably look like 8 or 9 attempts a game. And we've seen years in his career where he has shot more than 6 times from 3 a game, and his efficiency has never dipped. So I expect a really big year from Luke Kennard this year. Tingus Pingus, or to use his Christian name, Kristaps Porzingis, is probably going to be the biggest question mark for this team this entire year. Last year for the Celtics, he struggled, and honestly, that may be an understatement. He just never really had it going with Boston. He was in and out of the lineup with injury. When he was playing, he just didn't look like himself. And then when we got to the playoffs, he had this mystery illness, which, again, kept him out of the lineup. If there's any hope for Hawks fans about this Kristaps Porzingis situation, it's that he looked fantastic in Eurobasket. So if he's able to do that for a national team, hopefully he can translate that to the Atlanta Hawks. I think that if Kristaps Porzingis stays healthy this year, him and Trae Young are going to be one of the most deadly duos in the entire league. If Kristaps Porzingis isn't healthy, I still think that this team is pretty talented, but there are more concerns if he's not in the lineup. Now let's talk departures, and there were a ton of them. Clint Capella, Karis LeVert, Terrence Mann, Larry Nance Jr., and George Niang. There are actually too many players to talk about individually, but like I said at the beginning of the video, I think this is probably going to be a good move that they moved on from these players. Guys like Clint Capella, George Niang, and Larry Nance Jr. just didn't match a timeline that the Hawks are currently on. And Karis LeVert, along with Tre Mann, just weren't impactful enough to warrant bringing them back. Now, while I think that all of them are very good players, I also think that now, because of these additions that we talked about, Atlanta is as talented of a roster as ever, and they have the ability to replace and replenish anything that they would have lost this year. So if it wasn't obvious enough, I am very high on the Hawks this year. I think that there are only 2 teams that are definitively better than the Hawks this year in the East, and that is the New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think there's a very real scenario that at the end of the year, we're looking at this Hawks team as a 3 seed in the East. I also really like the fact that the Hawks are going for it this year. They saw that Indy and Boston are probably going to take a step back, and they figured, why not now? And there's also some question marks about the 76ers and the Bucks, so it makes sense why the Hawks want to go all in on a Trae Young roster. Now, if they fall short, if they don't make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, I do think there's a pretty high possibility that they will end up trading Trae Young. And usually, that would be the beginning of an end for a franchise. But honestly, with this team, I think that they have the pieces to rebuild. Over the next 7 years, they have 8 first-round draft picks, and I am positive that if you decided to move on from Trae Young, you would get at least 2 more. And that's not even mentioning the other kinds of role players that you have on this team that you could get more draft capital from. Most importantly, I really believe in the future of Jalen Johnson. I think that he's the real deal. I think that he's going to make this borderline all-star push as the number 2 in Atlanta. And I think he's as good of a player as any to try and build around if the time comes. I really don't want that time to come for Atlanta. And if I were to make a prediction about it, I don't think that time will come. I think that the Hawks have a very good chance to make the Eastern Conference Finals. And once you're there, it takes a little bit of a winning streak to make it to the promised land. How do you feel about the Hawks? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're down there, check my description. I've got a link tree with all of my socials: Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok. I am everywhere. I also have a Discord community that I would love for you to be a part of. But that's going to do it for me today. Be on the lookout for your favorite team in this series. Be kind. Tell somebody you love them. And I'll see you in the next one.
Barely scraping by. Trying to stop puffing. I'm trying to be one of the greats.